not being so intensely focused on work was something that I really needed to overcome
Mm,
because it was like my primary focus. And if you think about the hours in a day, I just gave work more than I probably should have.
mm,
And I should have
yeah.
allocated that time more to myself
Mm.
first, as well as to the people that I love, as well as the things that I enjoy and love.
Everyday people working 9 to 5, saving up that money, trying to survive, investing in the future, trying to be wise, you gonna be money hero. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nik Johnson, host of Everyday Money Heroes, and I've reached early retirement. I'm here to provide information on how to obtain financial independence and inspire you through sharing stories of everyday people who are turning knowledge into freedom.
That hustle, always reaching for the sky. We're gonna be money heroes, never gonna shy.
Hello and welcome to Everyday Money Heroes. We provide information and inspiration to people of all ages to take control of their financial journey. I'm your host, Nik Johnson, and today we have a very special guest. Before we get into our conversation, I would ask that if you're watching this on YouTube, that you would subscribe to Everyday Money Heroes, and that you would like and share it as well. If you're listening to this by way of podcast, that you would follow Everyday Money Heroes on your podcast player of choice. With that being said, a little about our guests. Imagine going from high school dropout, dealing with credit card debt, and feeling like the rebellious black sheep of the family, to building a rock solid financial foundation, walking away from the corporate grind in your 40s, and becoming a completely self funded, stay at home single mom. No lottery winnings, no inheritance, no side hustle, just pure resilience, intentional living, and consistent action. The creator behind the FI Xperiment, an absolute powerhouse and a true inspiration for anyone looking to take control of their time and money. She proves that no matter where you start or what odds are stacked against your financial freedom is in reach. Hi, Jean.
Hey, thanks, Nick. That was a nice little recap right there.
Oh, well, thank you. Hey, it's all about you. So I'm excited to have Jean here on the show. Far too often, I feel as though you represent a demographic within our community that is not spotlighted often. And I understand why, because it can be very challenging, and that's being a single mom. And so that's definitely one thing that I hope that we can dive in here to give inspiration to not only everyone, but to those individuals who out there who might be single moms who might question if financial independence is obtainable, having you share your story. So thank you so much for your willingness to do it. And so
Yep.
I think I might have just necessarily kind of gave a little spoiler, but I'm going to ask you anyway, where are you on your personal finance journey?
So I am what you say is regular FI,
Okay.
financially independent.
Okay.
I think most people follow the FIRE movement call it financially independent, retired early. But for
Mhm.
myself, I say it's realized early, more work optional.
Okay. And so that's the biggest thing about it. You just want to be able to have the option that if you want to work or not, you may never go back. You might do something. It's completely
Yep,
up to you. So
totally.
you definitely have that. And so you see that you're now work optional. Before you reached this, what was your occupation as you were going along your journey?
I was a CPA, but
Okay.
not one who did taxes.
Okay.
And I primarily worked in one multinational corporation for the bulk of my career.
Okay. Um, how many years were you with that employer, if you don't mind asking?
A little over 10 years.
A little over 10 years. Okay, great. All right. And so you were a CPA most of your career. Now, I kind of have to ask, in part of your story, you were a high school dropout. And some people say, okay, how could you go from a high school dropout to being a CPA? And so I'm very intrigued on how that journey went from there to there.
Yeah. Well, so I grew up under a tiger mom, tiger dad household,
Okay.
with very high expectations,
Mm,
but also no emotional nurturing, so to speak. So when things were happening around me and I needed someone to kind of talk to, they weren't really there for that. So
Mm,
I kind of went down the wrong rabbit hole, so to speak,
mhm,
and did a lot of things I probably should not have.
mm.
Actually, most definitely should not have. Um, and so I pretty much went from straight A student to high school dropout within a year.
Wow. Okay.
And I ran away
Mm.
and had to go back. I didn't get a GED. I actually just graduated late.
Okay.
They had to put me in a different learning center
Okay.
in order to get my diploma.
Mm,
And then I think after that, it was always in me that I wanted to do better for myself. I was just in a really dark place.
mm,
And so I decided to start improving on myself and taking a hard look at what I needed to do better. And so just slowly from there, I started out at a community college, and then went on to get my bachelor's and my master's. I
mm.
worked the entire time that I was going to school,
Okay.
but I still managed to graduate in 4 years' time with my
Wow.
master's.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I know it was crazy. Um,
Driven.
yeah, I was very driven. I have to say, I was very, very driven. I don't know if it was to prove to myself or to prove to my parents that whatever they think of me is not truly what I guess what they had envisioned. But yeah, I essentially had to build my way back up. I mean, really just even building the rapport with my family,
Hmm.
and it started bit by bit. Not a lot of people knew what was going on behind the scenes. On the outside, they just saw someone that was really driven with some people. With others, they saw someone who was like a party animal.
Hmm.
Um, with my parents, they just thought of me as uh, definitely not on the totem pole at all
Mm,
whatsoever. So I just did a lot of stuff behind the scenes when, people weren't looking, I was
mm.
constantly churning, studying, working on myself in so many different ways.
Yeah. You know, it's a lot of stuff that you said there. And one of the biggest things was that last thing that you said. You did a lot of things behind the scenes. A lot of times, we as individuals don't see the work that goes on
No.
as far as in the dark,
Yeah.
as far as
Yeah.
making sure that we're able to get to where we're able to get to. And so,
For sure. It was not a quick turnaround.
yeah, absolutely. And so as you're doing this, you go, you drop out, you go back to school, you get your traditional diploma, then you earn your master's in 4 years, which is definitely accelerated because typically,
Bachelor's and master's, yeah.
oh, okay, so because typically, okay, so at the end of 4 years, you had your bachelor's and your master's. So it typically
Yeah.
takes folks, usually four
Yeah.
years just to get a
I like
bachelor's.
squeezed that thing together. I mean, like there was no sleep whatsoever.
Okay, so you once again you're kind of showing that, hey, you know what, I can do this. And also, as you're on your personal finance journey, we all have different strategies that we use as far as real estate, index funds, side hustles. What was your
Yeah.
primary strategy?
I wouldn't say I had a primary strategy. I think it was driven into me by my parents that I always needed to save. Now, they didn't
Mhm,
tell me to invest, it was just to
mhm,
save. So
mhm.
I always did set aside, no matter how small or large, a portion of my income into paper financial assets, so
Okay.
like stocks or bonds.
Okay.
And I didn't exactly know what I was doing for a long time. I had it sitting in cash.
Oh, wow.
um and
Okay.
then and then because I was working on myself, I started learning a little bit more, and so I started investing in my 20s.
Okay.
But I really didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that I needed to set aside funds, no matter how small, from my W-2 paycheck for in saving in investments.
Okay.
And I think I just picked whatever was available.
Okay.
And then slowly over time educated myself and started reallocating some of those investments into things that were more what I wanted to invest in.
Mm, yeah. And so here we have an example of imperfect action.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, there's a term analysis paralysis.
Yep,
And sometimes individuals, they want to do something, but they're afraid that they're going to do the wrong thing.
for
But
sure, for
often tell
sure.
people that sometimes any action is better than not doing anything at all. You can
Yeah,
always refine.
I mean, you don't want to just you don't want to have to be perfect in order for something to happen. It's mostly just taking action, being consistent around it, and then making sure that you revisit and understand what it is and obtain more knowledge so
Mm.
that you can start allocating things a little differently or changing up your lifestyle a little differently with the knowledge that you're gaining along the way.
Yeah. And even you having that savings muscle, it allowed you the opportunity that, okay, even if I don't know everything I'm doing, I'm at least going to have some money sitting here for where I at least feel comfortable enough to take some action. I'll actually have it there to be able to go and invest it into the
That's
markets.
right.
So that's extremely important. And so in your 20s, you started to invest. If I recall that correctly, you started to invest. You had to start saving up and you start to invest. And as you go on, kind of time goes on, and some people call it the messy middle. How you just kind of there, you've kind of understood what you need to do. You almost have a framework of everything that needs to happen as far as going along your journey. But as you look back on your journey, was there one major lesson or piece of advice you wish you had knew when you first started?
Um, I would say probably to step back and look at my life as a wider lens
Mm,
and seeing what actually fulfills me. I think for the longest time, it was that drive
mm,
to either prove to myself or I think mostly just to prove to myself that I can get things done.
mm,
Um, but throughout that process, I was putting in tons of work, on the work side, but also on my self-improvement journey. I was not taking care of myself. I was also not being too cognizant of how I spent my time with the
mm,
things that I cared about the most. So there were one too many instances where I would be slaving away at work or doing projects for other people that, you know, at the time I valued and I wanted to, but if I were to sit back and look back at my life, is that something that brings me fulfillment? Not necessarily. I think at that moment in time it did, but I would encourage as people are working through their journey to really stop and look at what fulfills them at that time and potentially 5, 10, 15 years down the road. I mean, this whole just not being so intensely focused on work was something that I really needed to overcome
mm,
because it was like my primary focus. And if you think about the hours in a day, I just gave work more than I probably should have.
mm.
And I should have
Yeah.
allocated that time more to myself
Mm,
first, as well as to the people that I love, as well as the things that I enjoy and love.
yeah. The work-life balance can be a challenge for a lot of people, especially individuals who are extremely driven. And sometimes, you look at it like, okay, I know I see the next role, the next position,
Yep.
or even when you do that, or sometimes one of the challenges that I had when I was employed is that I would, if I saw a deadline, I was like, I got to meet this deadline. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't care if we
Yeah.
under budgeted resources or time for it. I was like, I'm going to make it work. And one of the things I recall in meeting you as you discussed your journey to financial independence was that really early retirement really wasn't something that was on your radar before
No,
you started. So
no.
how did that come about?
So, I mean, like early retirement was definitely not something on my mind because I really wanted to. Actually, no, it's not that I really wanted to. I just was just in my head. I was going to work until I was 67.
Mhm,
Um, but I think what ended up happening was, when you're a single mom and you're balancing work and juggling home life and everything, it's really taxing on the
mhm,
body. And after you turn 40, it's just like progressively goes downhill. I mean, like I mean,
Yeah.
I thought that I was going to be okay, but no, I was not okay.
Hmm.
And since I had been going at it for so long, just juggling like a really fast paced, like work and life type thing, I put sleep on the wayside.
Mm.
And it was really taking a toll on my body and my mind, honestly. And the thing that kind of bothered me was, you know, there were people that were dying all the time around me, and I think when COVID hit, it kind of gave me some time to reflect.
Mhm.
um and I really enjoyed working at home with my daughter.
Right.
As annoying as sometimes that it was, with her underneath me crawling around. I think she was like 5 at the time.
Uh,
Um, or just turned 5 at the time. And I was just constantly on calls. I really liked spending time with her, and I just never got enough time with her. I felt like I was always paying someone else to
mhm.
take care of her after school, or, a daycare, or paying for enrichment activities where, she's really not being enriched per se. She's just being babysat.
Right.
And I just felt like I could provide her a lot more skills and
Mm.
I guess life skills, than say someone that I pay on the side for, however many hours. And when I look at the 24 hours in a day, the bulk of that was with work. And maybe I had a good 2 hours with her while she was awake.
Mhm.
And in between that time, we were, having to do stuff, and so it just wasn't enough time for me. And on the weekends, it was like that too, where sometimes I would have deadlines and I'm just constantly working or just committing myself to a lot of social things as well. And so I really wanted to just take a look at how I intentionally wanted to spend my time and what really made me happy. And it was kind of difficult because I was at a stage in my life where I was getting paid well.
Mhm.
And I had been working towards that, for years now. And it just wasn't, that really wasn't what I was aiming for anymore. What I was aiming for was just time, to be able to spend with her while she's still young,
Mhm.
and also just do things that made me happy, and just at peace.
Yeah.
And so it was during that time that I decided to take a hard look at my finances. I always kind of had a general idea, but I never really understood how I could utilize it in advance and before I turned 67. And I never really kind of thought what I was going to do after I fully retired at that age, anyways. And
Mhm.
so I just kind of shifted that up and let myself kind of think through, what does that life look like to me? And am I able to sustain it? And do I have enough? And when I say enough, I mean just enough for me and her. Um, I did check with my parents to make sure that they had enough on their own too, just
Yeah.
to make sure. But they're still working and they've always been very frugal. Not necessarily me, but
Mhm.
they've always been very frugal. And so what I realized was I was actually able to pull that lever, and it wasn't a focus of mine at the beginning. It just so happened that I had actually set aside enough where it grew to a point where I would be able to withdraw from it.
Yeah. There's sometimes when you look at everything and it goes back to what we were saying as far as, okay, looking back at your journey, what's one thing that you wish that you had known? And it's really about, okay, focusing on what really matters. And you got yourself to a point where you're like, okay, you know what? How do I want to spend this very precious resource that I have, which is time? And I find
Yeah,
myself
time.
giving it to a job. And I know that's one of the things that hit me as I was getting close. Um, I know you shared that really that wasn't kind of your North Star ever since I was in my early 20s. Not having to work past 50 was always my North Star. I was like, okay, I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to do it. I was like, but I'm going to figure it out. And so what happened is that I kind of had it as my North Star. But what happened is that as my kids got older, me and my wife, we had kids much later in life. And so what happened is that as I was getting, several years into my career, my kids were, my middle boy was, what man, 14, and my daughter was 11. And I
Mhm.
really started thinking, I was like, okay, I don't know how much more time I got with them.
Yeah.
And I was like, and there was some study that had been done recently or some type of stat that was shared. I think it said that by the time your kids turn 18, you spend like 90% of like
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
time that I was like, I was like, I need to try to capitalize on this some kind
No,
of,
no, for sure.
yeah. And so that's what really made me say, okay, I need to really look at my numbers and see how close I am to it. And
Yep.
also the challenge is that usually whenever we get to the point when we get ready to step away, we're always making more money than we've ever made.
Oh yeah.
And so that's why it's really hard, dude, because
No,
I
yeah.
know I sit up and I thought about when I was making $8.10 in my first corporate job.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I was like,
It
man, I can
yeah.
imagine.
It is so hard because you had worked your whole life to try to get to that point, and then now you're at crossroads and you're like, do I keep going because the money is great, or do I spend the time that I'll never get back? I mean, potentially you could still make money down the road, but you're
Yeah,
never going to get that time back with your little one, you know?
yeah,
And so that was my ultimate North Star whenever I started looking into my options.
mhm,
Um, at how I could be able to do this.
yeah. And ultimately that's really what it's all about. So I'm happy that you're able to sit that and to be in a position, um, also as a single mom to still have that option to be like, okay, you know what? I'm in a position right now where I can step back and step away and spend this time with my daughter if I choose. I think that's great. Now, you did also
Yeah.
mention that you checked in with your parents, which I think is very admirable. But when you just told them that you decided to just kind of step away, what was the response from like your family and your friends?
My parents were concerned.
Mm,
So they I mean, we don't talk about finances at all, so
mm,
they were just concerned. They were just trying to make sure that I wasn't being lofty, or being too irrational or rash with my decisions, because I'm the type of person that usually does make decisions rather quickly and I just act on it.
mm,
And so they wanted to make sure that I wasn't, that I actually thought through things, which I did. I spent a lot of time thinking through it. I wrote a whole bunch of stuff down, and I mean, like lots and lots of thoughts down.
mm,
My sister was shocked. I think her initial reaction was that that I was just being careless, maybe.
mm,
But with my family over the last 12 months, honestly, um, I've been able to talk to them and share with them a lot more about how I was able to do this and why. And also kind of explain to them how things work. And I think from there, they kind of understood that I was in a, a, a more stable position than they had thought. I think always
mm,
in the back of their head, they're still thinking I'm that black sheep, the
mhm.
the one that like, messes up all the time. And but you know what? They never really had to come in and save me ever. So
Right.
I think I've already built that rapport with them over the last few years, but in the last 12 months, they're now starting to come to me regarding their finances.
Oh,
Uh,
that's good.
yeah, so my dad's got like some questions, and I would try to the amazing thing about not ample, but more time now is I can mess around with AI. So
Mhm.
my responses to him, I would translate it in AI and send it to him so that he can digest the information a little bit more. I
Okay.
think with the introduction of AI, I've been able to communicate with them a little bit more in their language,
Mhm.
which is Mandarin.
Oh,
And so they're able to kind of understand, where I'm coming from, how I can help them, and the explanations that I've been trying to, um, coach them through in the past that they never thought about. I mean, I say we don't talk about finances, but I've always kind of occasionally mentioned things here and there over the years, but they don't
mhm.
they're not ready to receive the information.
Mhm.
And I also probably didn't give it to them in the way that was digestible for them.
Right.
So I was able to kind of spend time working on how I can do it so that I can reach my parents in a way that they can understand, and my sister.
Mm,
So the my family is on board. They're still kind of like, oh, make sure you're taking care of things and that you're not letting anything slide, which I am doing my best to make sure that that's not going to happen. And
mhm,
then with my friends, I think they were more shocked.
mhm,
I think, I mean, not too many of them know. Some of them were shocked and surprised, but then also later on they weren't surprised because they've seen me grow over the years and they know that I do a lot behind the scenes. They've
mhm,
seen me kind of go through the struggle of divorce and get my own house and move and do all these things pretty much independently. So I've never been one to really ask for help, which is probably not a good thing.
mm.
It's better to ask for help, but I've just never been one to ask for help. But the plus side is it's gotten me more resilient and
Yes.
I can be able to overcome things.
Yeah, absolutely. So, based on everything that you've shared here, I think that maybe I won't say, I don't want to make this assumption. Has your definition of success changed from when you first started your career to where you are right now?
It has.
Okay.
Um, I think like with most people, maybe
Okay.
success, wealth was tied to your title, your net worth, what you can show on the outside, that you're living an expensive lifestyle per se.
Hmm.
Which I think I definitely was a little bit like that earlier
Okay.
on. But nowadays, I think to me, success and wealth is just making sure that, when I'm looking back at my life on my deathbed, that I have no regrets and that I'm not leaving any burden to society and that I did my thing with my child and that she's learned from me and that we got to spend the time that I had intended, as well
Mhm.
as with the close relationships that I have that I want to nurture, that I make sure that I do that.
All right. That's great. And that availability of time gives you the opportunity to be able to do that. One of the things I recall from college is
Yeah.
that we had to eulogize ourselves. And
I
one of the
love
things,
that. I love that.
yeah, we had to eulogize ourselves, and that was assignment. And then we all had to get up in front and present and basically read our eulogy. And one of the things that the professor said is that, now you have to think about it. You can only write about what you've done up until this point. So, how far are you extending and reaching out into your community to make it a better place and to make society a better place? Because it's really easy for us to focus on our obligations and responsibilities. But at the end of the day, how many people have you impacted? How many have you touched? And so I always kind of think about that exercise every now and then when I think about, okay, when it's all said and done, how much good will I have done in this world? And having the ability to have this additional time helps me do that. And so it allows me to be able to be the PTA president, it allows me to go and volunteer,
Oh yeah.
to give out things and things of that nature. And which I think,
Agree.
yeah, which kind of leads us into our next question. Oftentimes we focus so much on crossing the finish line. Um, we never really think about what happens next. It's almost like what's the movie? Forrest Gump. And it's like, Forrest Gump, he just runs and he runs and he runs. And all of a sudden, one day he stops and he just kind of looks around like, okay, well, this is kind of it. And so a lot of people focus on crossing the line, but they don't think about what they do next. So I'd have to ask you, how do your days look now? Now that, you've gone from this really, this high pressure corporate job, high stress, you're highly functional to now being someone who's work optional.
Well, I think my days are structured pretty much the same as they were before in
Okay.
terms that the activities that I loved before that I did only in a small snippet of my 24 hours,
Mm,
I've now expanded that into the bulk of my day versus like the small segment of my day that I
mm,
used to allocate towards it.
okay.
So that includes, being a parent, right? Volunteering, mentoring kids. I do a lot of that with the schools that she's at. I do have a ton of hobbies and stuff. I do spend quite a bit of time reading and learning. I'm
Mhm.
always curious, sometimes to a fault, because you can only read so much. You still need you've got to stop learning and start executing because
Application. Yeah.
otherwise, you're just absorbing knowledge and you're not doing anything with it, which at some point you've got to put that down and start working on whatever it is that you just consumed.
Mhm.
So I've got tons of hobbies. I do have a lot of I've got a good inner circle of friends, but
Okay.
being able to spend time with them, I don't know that it's quantifiably all that much more because everyone still works and
Still working?
has families,
Yeah.
so a lot of the emphasis has really been on the volunteering aspect for myself. Um, I've always been a fitness person, so I've kind of dove a little bit deeper around longevity and
Mm.
changing up the way that I do my fitness as well as focusing on um, being a professional sleeper because I was not good at that. I was not
Mm.
good at sleeping, and now I do try to allocate 7 to 8 hours a day for sleep. Now the quality itself may
Mhm.
not be great, but I'm working on it. But
Okay.
like you said, life's like a box of chocolates, right? Like I really don't know what the next day is going to be, and
Mhm.
I think with when you leave the workforce like this, especially when you're like walking away from your like golden handcuffs, it's hard to imagine what's going to be dealt your way, but
Mhm.
I think if you have that north star or the compass, things will just things will come up naturally, right? There
Mhm.
will be emergencies, there will be things that you didn't expect to happen, but if you have that fulfillment or purpose um as your north star, you'll make things happen.
Mm. Yeah, that is true. You really have to focus on what you want to do. As you say, you have to have that North Star. And it really helps to, because we talk about a journey, but a journey always has a path. And, we need to have direction for it.
Yeah.
Definitely. Um,
Yeah.
as we get ready to kind of wrap up things, there is someone who is listening to this who might just be starting their financial independence journey, or maybe they haven't even. This is the first time they've heard of financial independence, and this is a foreign concept to them. Um, what could you advise, or what instructions would you give someone who is just really starting, or just thinking about yourself back when you first started your journey? What kind of nuggets or advice would you give them as they get ready to start?
On the financial independence journey
Mhm.
specifically,
Yes. Mhm.
um at the end of the day, it's really not about money.
Mm. It's true, but
um
ironic, right?
it's true but ironic.
Yeah.
I feel like at the end of the day it's about time.
Mm.
And it's about looking at your life and knowing that it's finite
Mhm.
and that there will be different times in your life where you're going to be emphasizing on growing your wealth, right?
Mhm.
Um, but you also have to be able to live your life and don't be too focused on, say, don't be too focused about just money. Okay.
Mhm.
You really got to look at it in a broader lens and think about how you want your life to look like, not just the money, but I'm talking about like who, the what, the experiences, like what do you want to have and when, and then kind of backtrack from there and allocate how you think you might achieve that or get to that point. And so if you have in your head that you just want to be a vagabond living in your car camper, and never be married, then your expenses are probably going to be really low. And if that brings you joy and fulfillment, maybe you don't need to kill yourself for a while working at that job that you have. Maybe you can spread that out and be able to figure out when you want to be able to live that kind of lifestyle and still sustain yourself. But really just kind of taking a hard look at yourself. Not don't compare to other people, but
Right.
take a look at how you want to live your life and mold that path along the way. But always making sure that you reflect
Mm,
maybe annually to see if you're still, going in the right direction or if you need to change directions. But really it's the time. Not
yeah.
only does time help you with compound investments and stuff, but time really is very important because you really have a limited time and you don't know how much that is.
Yeah, that is true. That is sage advice. Thank you very much. For those who would like to continue to keep track with what you're doing or to connect, what's the best way for folks to do that?
Yeah, so I have a blog called FIXperiment. That's FIX
Mm,
Experiment.
hmm
You spell it FIXperiment
hmm
com, which I haven't been updating that, that much. I had an intent to do it, but I
hmm
didn't do it that much. I didn't spend too much time on it. And then you'd be happy to hear, I actually did create a podcast
Okay.
placeholder under the same name, Fixperiment,
hmm
which hopefully I will add on to. But for now, I just have a placeholder podcast name that I recorded something for just to temporarily hold it. This was new
All
from
right.
from our last discussion.
That's great. That is awesome. We definitely appreciate what you're doing here as far as sharing your story and also um, just kind of shedding light on a very small segment of our community that doesn't get enough attention. And that is to the single mothers who are out there doing it as well. So if you are a single mother, you can do it. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and wrap us up here. For those of you who are listening, I'm going to ask that you would subscribe to Everyday Money Heroes once again if you're watching this on YouTube, and also to follow us if you're listening to this by way of podcast. And as always, I'm your host, Nik Johnson, reminding you to trust the process. Have a great day.